At this time, I'm going to ask Crabtree Rohrball and Associates, John and Seth, to come up and join us and provide a preliminary overview of our first priority, which is an option to consolidate grades 3 to 5.
Thank you, Dr. Krauser. Again, I'm Seth Wentz with Crabtree Rohrball and Associates. The gentleman over here, John Badia, he's principal with the firm. And we're here to talk about the opportunities for an intermediate center. We were tasked with taking a look at the intermediate center, taking a look at the possible options, and to develop some concepts to discuss here. So tonight's agenda for our discussion is going to be looking at the intermediate school 3 to 5 option review. We're going to talk about some cost estimates associated with that, energy impacts and potential energy savings, and then project durations. I have this slide up here. This should look somewhat familiar to many of you. This is actually a slide from the previous study that happened about a year and a half ago. And what you're seeing here, these graphics on the left talk about program. The lists on the right talk about facilities, conditions, and needs. And if you remember the way this graphic worked, you see the footprint there of both East York and Indian Rock, which is a little bit off the page at the bottom. And you see the footprint of the main building all connected together, and you see the blocks to the side. What that's demonstrating is the program we were given to execute based on the student load and the needs of the building. Everything that doesn't fit within your existing building are those blocks to the side. So it demonstrates a clear need for renovation and investment. The lists to the right, those are all updates that need to happen to the buildings, capital improvements. And this is what Dr. Krauser was just talking about with the highest needs. When we looked at the breadth of the project, these two were the ones that came to the top. So we switch up a little bit here. We're going to be talking about option A and option B instead of 1 through 4 as we did last year. Option A is going to be an addition renovation, so maintaining the existing building and adding on to it. And for the sake of this study, the East York site was used for that purpose. And then option B is a new construction option. The way you can read these two graphics is the white box in each one of these graphics is the existing building. Everything red is the addition onto it or the new construction. And the gray that you see actually on the other side, on the right-hand side, the gray is the proposed demolition then. Next slide, please. So what we always try and do from a site standpoint is try and separate vehicular traffic from visitors, guests, parents from the bus loop. So what you're seeing here, we're proposing an addition onto the back of the building. You're seeing an addition on the front to handle administrative needs. And you're seeing in the yellow the bus loop and the proposed parent loop in blue. So what this does, this is about the best we could do with an existing building on the site as far as separating that vehicular from bus traffic. And the reason for that is you're kind of handcuffed to the existing footprint of the building and its existing location. So to try and alleviate some of this, we actually have a new access road going out to Sundale, and that is property that's already owned by the school, and creating a inlet for parent drop-off. So you'd have a parent drop-off in the back and the bus drop-off happening in the front. What this does is it creates 2 points of entry, which that creates more need for observation, more access points to the school. So it's just something to consider. So this gets close to that goal of separating those two vehicular routes, but this doesn't get you all the way there. What this does do is it maintains a large part of that open field. Essentially, this 2-story addition that would be on the back is overtop the paved play area. So you are able to maintain much of the well-used East York site. Next slide, please. So what you're seeing here, this is the enlarged floor plan of that East York proposed. Again, the red block that you see in the key plan up there, that's the addition onto the building. So that would be new construction. And what we're proposing here is a phased construction project for this. Phase 1 being the construction of the new addition to the building. It would be a 2-story addition, as you're seeing the plan pulled out just page north of the main floor plan. And what that allows is a phased renovation of the rest of the building. So once you have that new addition built, it's constructed, it's inhabitable, you can start moving students out of the other wings to do phased renovation. What that means is you don't have to have any modulars on this site. But what it also means is that you're going to have students in phases moving throughout the building as those wings get renovated. This does mean the students are going to live through an educational year and possibly a year and a half where there is construction in the building as well, and the disruptions that come along with that. Now, I had mentioned about there being 2 additions onto the building. There's a 2-story piece in the back, and there's a addition on the front. The addition on the front is for administrative purposes. If you're increasing a student body here, obviously you're going to need more more space in the administrative suite. As far as a budget, so this budget has been re-examined and updated. And actually, I'll take one step back here. The floor plans, if you look at the floor plan and what it has in the program for the floor plan, you'll notice that it does have mention to 1 through 3 facilities. And I know you were probably looking at it and thinking, why is there kindergarten in here? It's because that floor plan is actually pulled out of the study. It's the same program as far as square footage needs, classroom needs, all that stuff. So if you are looking at that floor plan and you see some pieces there, they're actually from the K through 3. That's the reason for that. And that's also the reason that floor plan should look familiar. It was presented to this group previously. Sorry, back to budget here. The budget for option A, as we're going through, we have 60,000 square feet of new construction here for a total of 127,700 square feet. And what that comes out to be is a range of about $37.7 million to $40.5 million. Next, please. So option B, what we're looking at here is a possibility for new construction on the site. Now, I want to be clear, we are not saying this is the floor plan for this building. We have not vetted out adjacencies, things like that. What we have done is we've taken the programmatic space and proved that it can fit on the site. And so that's what this really is used for. It's not to say we solved the problem. It's used for a discussion and to establish a budget and parameters. So what you're seeing here on this slide, the red is new construction. The gray with the red dash at the bottom is demolition at the completion of that phase. It's demonstrating that we can fit this building on the site in new construction while East York remains in operation without disturbing the educational flow other than just the sound of construction in the back. It does mean that play facility, as far as the paved play and the grass play, would be lost for that period of construction. Next, please. This next slide, it's demonstrating how a site could lay out. Again, this is only a potential layout, and this goes back to those goals that I mentioned earlier that we try to have. We try and separate the bus loop from the parent drop-off loop, and you try and have one central spot of entry for all bus traffic and student traffic. And that's what's accomplished here. You would be able to have the bus loop on the left, the parent loop on the right, and have a central drop-off lane that you'd be able to walk up the sidewalk to the main entry of the building. Now, the fields would be reduced due to the increased parking loads due to new civil. Well, you'd have revised parking counts by code that we'd have to meet. So the paved area does increase a bit. There are fields that we'd be able to replace there. So you have the play in the fields in the back, and then you have an additional set of fields in the front. We would still suggest having a service lane separate from that parent and bus drop-off loop, and that's what you're seeing coming off the side right there. Next, please. Actually, go back up for just 1 second. One thing I didn't mention the previous layout was the complete separation of public uses of the building from educational uses of the building. In the proposed addition renovation to East York, if we were to keep this as is, this room in particular would stay where it is because it doesn't make sense to tear it down and move it just because it's not in the most convenient spot. What a new construction option would do would allow you to have that separation of public and private. So you're seeing here at that red arrow entry part, everything to the right is the cafeteria, the gym, those kind of functions. Everything to the left is going to be the more secured section of the building that's really the educational part. So again, with a new building, you're able to lay it out the way you'd like it to function. As far as a budget, we are at 120,000 square feet. And you'll notice this is 7,700 square feet less than the renovation option. It's because we can realize efficiencies in laying out a new building. There's a lot of redundant circulation in that figure 8 option with doing the 2-story addition onto it. So what that means budget-wise, we're at about the $41 million to $43.5 million price point for new construction. Phasing, and what this means from here's the comparison of the two. The spread between the two options, new construction or addition renovation, it's about a $3 million spread, plus or minus. Energy savings. The administrative team had asked us to get with our engineer, more engineering, and investigate what are potential energy cost savings of new construction over existing addition renovations. Now, when we go through an addition renovation, we try and take care of all the energy efficient benefits that make sense. Insulation in the roof, for example, is a good one that makes sense. It's easy to rip a roof off and replace. What is not easy to do is open up every single exterior wall and add insulation to it in an effective way. So when we say there's an energy savings between option A and option B, it's mostly due to the envelope of the building and mostly the walls. So going through that analysis, we worked the engineer, and we took a look at it from a 20-year cycle. If we're saying this is a 20-year investment in the building, we did the same with energy costs. It comes out to be a little over $400,000 over 20 years. That's in today's dollars for energy cost. As we know, the cost of energy is going to increase over time, so that number would grow proportionate to the increase in energy costs. As far as durations, for the addition renovation, we'd estimate about 9 months for design time and a month for bidding. So from the time that an approval, assuming an approval happens by the October timeframe, we'd start to design at that point, which would wrap up construction in an 18-month duration, right around the turn of the year in 26. And I'll come back to that last part after going through the new construction option, and just stay there, please. For a new construction option, we'd be looking at about a year of design work, 11 months to a year, another bidding period right after that, and then 24 months of construction. Now, you notice at the end of option A there, we have the IR transition. So if you were doing the construction of the addition renovation, you would have the East York students here at this location during that construction, and that construction would wrap up at the beginning of 26. But it's not very likely that you'd say, okay, 1 month into the new year of school, we're going to move all the students from one school over to another. They'd probably wait until the end of that school year, and it would be fully occupied with all students in one location at the same exact time, the school year 26-27. So if you look at that, it may look in construction that you're going to have the addition renovation finished first, but in reality, it would be the same experience for the other side of the district. And that's a lot to throw at you, and we finally did a presentation in less than 2 hours, so I think we're good. Questions?
Thanks for the presentation. For option A, is the administration side in the front first just one floor or 2 floors?
That would be just one floor.
One floor. Okay.
Really, the only two-story section is that red
Back.
one. That's the only two-story section.
Thanks.
And again, the same disclaimer for the first scenario, option A. It's just put there as an option to solve the problem. It's not saying that is the solution. So there would be a lot of vetting with staff, students, and administration and the board.
And I know the green space gets utilized a lot at this location. So what's the option B reduction? Do we have numbers on those?
In green space?
Yeah, so like the fields. So option B, obviously you're taking up more footprint with the parking lot and the new construction.
Yeah, I don't have that number with me. We can try and look into seeing what kind of field layout we can make fit. You are absolutely correct. These fields are used back here very heavily.
Thank you.
In your examples, when you talked about facility conditions, is the assumption if we do option A that all of these are taken care of within the existing facility as well as doing the addition?
Yeah, that's part of that phased renovation.
Yeah.
So we do the addition first, and then we'd start moving classrooms around into that. Well, first you fill it up as much as you can, leaving as much renovation space open as possible to make the duration as short as possible. But yes, we would be coming back through.
Would you consider a 2-story facility for option B to maximize the green space?
Yes, that is actually the proposal. It would be, the classroom wing would be 2 stories, and the rest of it would be 1.
Okay, so that footprint is taking that into account.
That long linear wing would be a 2-story wing.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Great, thank you. Again, we're unpacking three large priorities. The first one was to first investigate how a consolidated option can solve, I'll say, a large percentage of our needs through facility and facility maintenance. The second part of that is going to tackle the second priority building, which is the high school, both from a facility standpoint, but from a programmatic standpoint. On May 8th, the high school team, as well as administrative members, are going to start to lay the foundation for that piece. Our goal is to introduce these two parallel priorities so we can get a broad sense of what the scope of these items will be, so that from a financial standpoint, and we can start to lay out what financial options and planning can do, and Mrs. Chichuli and her team will then lay out the financial plan. I want to share this. As we went into this action, we first looked at the financial stability and the financial planning options that we can do, and that are best recommendations that we can see are a benefit to the district and something that we can afford. Air quotes for that. Based on the feedback that we received at the end of the future focus planning decision, as well as the work that Mrs. Chichuli has been doing with her budget forecasting, and what does that look like? So as we bring on board the next stage of this with the high school, we'll be able to bring both those together and those final capital plan improvements so we can bring together a final proposal with all of those financial needs. So May 8th, we're going to introduce the high school. These gentlemen will be joining us again back on May 15th at Property Finance to then unpack what are some potential solutions that we can do. And when we say solution, we're that first step, as they mentioned. None of these are final. These are the first steps in kind of a broad scope, squared off, kind of block design of how we can look to solve some of these these facility problems. Yes?
To one additional question. For the energy savings projection, were they done using what we have in place today? Were renewables considered?
Yeah, so the energy cost was used based on the information that was provided to us from facilities on the energy usage of the buildings. So it was modeled based on what you're using currently and the rates you currently have.
Okay.
As far as sustainables, that's really a question we should have. That's a discussion we should have as you get further into a project. Because what we do is we actually analyze for solar panel. Let's just use solar power for an example. We would take a look at the solar power ability of the site, meaning how much roof space you have, the angles to the sun, what its potential wattage is, and then apply that to the energy model. And what we do is a cost of return. So you essentially map it out and say, this solar field can get us a 7-year return, and everything past 7 years to 20 years is your sweet spot for making energy and not having to pay for it. 20 years is pretty much the life cycle, though, of the max production. So that's the reason we stop it at 20. But yeah, we would have that discussion in any of these options and take a look at opportunities to save.
Yeah, definitely would like to see that. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.